Grayson Dalb, and I'll be your UX tutor today. I'm so excited to work with you and get you started in the field of UX. Welcome to our first UX session. All you're going to need today is your laptop, and feel free to grab a pen and paper to take some notes. Today we're going to be discussing how to discover, plan, explore, create, finalize, and analyze. I know this seems like a lot, but don't worry, I'm going to walk you through it all. First, we're going to start with discover. And what we're going to learn about here is current situation analysis, competition analysis, how to find and talk to users individually, and how to use quantitative techniques to gather data about users and their needs. So we're going to go over this basic vocabulary, and I'd get ready to type or write down this information because it's pretty important. First, we're going to start off with current situation analysis. So here it's defined as if the product is the continuation of the previous one, we're going to gather and interpret existing data from tools like analytics software. Then we're going to use usability testing to gather more information about what can be improved on in an existing product. So in summary, this is when you look at both internal and external factors that could affect your work. So you can use a usability test to see what can be improved upon and use that knowledge to better your end product. Now we have a competition analysis. This is where we're going to look at similar products which already exist on the market and are successful. And you're going to take notes of what works for that. There's numerous ways to do a competitive analysis. I'm going to show you a few examples in the next few slides. And it's not just UX designers and researchers that utilize these. It can be used by anybody that is building out a product or service. A competitive analysis allows you to see what potential competition is doing, and it will help you figure out how you can differentiate yourself and stand out. So here's the first example. You can see here they did just a very basic grid layout. They compared their product to 3 competitors. As you can see, it really depends, what your product is. Like for here, they did assortment, home delivery, store pickup. So it kind of sounds like this could be something that's like an e-commerce site that they might have been comparing it to. But for instance, if you're doing, I'd say comparing iPhones, then you could compare Androids to Google phones, and for there you could pick up their user experience, their quickness, their data, how much memory each phone uses. So it really depends on the product that you're comparing and contrasting. Another example here is this one's just very basic. You can compare it on pricing and the quality. So this is really good to use when your product may be geared towards being on the lower spectrum of price. And this way you can utilize and tell how high of a quality you can keep it at that low price that you may have originally wanted. Now here's another example that's very visually pleasing and pretty easy to read. It compares 4 different products, and you can see the ratings from best to worst based on if they're easy to use, tutorials, updates, things like that. So as you can see, there's numerous ways to do competitive analysis. There truly is no correct or incorrect way. It's just what is best utilized for you and how easily your team is to read it. Now, one thing we can do is we can find and talk to users individually. How do we do this? We're going to recruit people. This can be friends, family, strangers at coffee shops, social media. Don't be afraid to go up to strangers anywhere you see. See if they're willing to talk with you. You could offer them a free cup of coffee. You could offer them a $5 incentive, a small gift card. Whatever you can do to find those people that could help you on your project. And when we find these users, this is when we're going to conduct usability tests or user interviews such as surveys or oral questions. Our goal is to find 5 to 10 relevant users to interview. First, we're going to gather their feedback by carefully preparing a script and asking open-ended questions. And one good thing to do is make sure that the users you're interviewing are good representatives of the product you're working on. You want to make sure that they have the correct background before you interview them. This can be done through a survey or just through talking to them beforehand. Now, there's a lot of quantitative techniques, as you can see. This is how we gather data about users and their needs. So there's web analytics, A/B testing, card sorting, tree testing, surveys, questionnaires, clustering, qualitative comments. It just keeps going. It's a lot. It's definitely a lot to learn, but I promise you with practice, you're going to get there. So each one is definitely best utilized for specific situations. So tree testing may be the best for one type of study that needs to be like an e-commerce site or maybe a museum website and for great informational architecture. But for something that needs a lot of background research, surveys and questionnaires could be really great. So that way you could see what people know and gain more research information just on very basics. It really depends on what you want to do. And we're going to talk about this more throughout the upcoming lessons. So this is when we have our plan. We're going to create personas, create user scenarios, create user flows, and identify red routes. So here's how we create a persona. After learning about our target user, we're going to create a persona by using the phrase, user is a blank who wants to blank. So this could be user is a, let's say, dentist who wants to get more clients. We're going to find a matching picture to identify and empathize with each persona. Personas give an answer about who the product is for. So here's a pretty good example of a guy named Adam. So he's a user experience designer, but he really wants to do something more fun on the weekends with his friends. He's having trouble because his friends tend to cancel plans or lose interest, and he really wants to make sure that they can find something that they all agree upon. So his favorite platforms are text message, Facebook, and email right now, but he wants to use something so he doesn't have to switch between these three applications. This is a basic summary of how a persona can work. You're going to put the user's goals, needs, their pain points, scenarios, and behaviors, photo, demographics, and a quote. So as you can see, Adam's pain points was his friends had to cancel plans. People were losing interest. He didn't like that. That was super frustrating. He needed to have enough time for planning events and be able to plan around his friends' schedules. His goals, he wanted to make sure that he could hang out with his friends. Being a user experience designer can be stressful at times. He wanted somewhere to go on the weekends and kind of just let loose. So as you can see, we had his photo on the left-hand side with his name. And, here's a short bio about him. So not every single persona has to be laid out exactly like this. This is just a helpful guideline to make sure you have the most important points in here. Now this is where we can create a user scenario. So after we identified our user, such as Adam, who's a UX designer, we're going to write down a sequence of events to match them with their objectives and goals. We're going to use user scenarios to answer a question about what the product is about. For example, if we were to go back to Adam, so what he wanted to do is he wanted to make plans more easily with his friends. This is where we would show a walkthrough of him going through the application on the direct platform itself. So we'd see him, kind of like as a prototype, like he clicked the back button here, or he clicked the front arrow here, and this is where it took him next on the screen. So here's an example of this. As you can see, you watch somebody press the home button, then they end up at this screen. And maybe they pressed this button right here. It's going to end up at the next screen. So as you can see, there's a ton of possibilities about where you could go. But this is a better example because it's going to allow you to visualize what buttons Adam could have pressed and where it would have taken him next. Now, one really important factor is to identify red routes. Red routes are the key activities that people expect to be able to complete within the system. These are the reasons why people purchased it. Defining them helps us avoid obstacles on key user journeys. If the red routes aren't obstacle-free, it's going to be really hard to convince users to continue using the system. An example of this is forgetting to put a back button on something or having access to the home menu on all screens. Now we're in the explore phase. This is where we're going to learn about information architecture, sketching, and wireframing. So information architecture, as you can see, this is where we're going to basically lay everything out. So for instance, if you were to click the Discover, there'd be a big drop-down menu. And this is where you have to figure out what's going to go under Discover, which thing is going to go first, which is going to go last. Now over here, you can see that they decided to put another menu here on this side that's going to give you in more detail while already being in, it looks like the LED TV section. So it's going to give you more information about the LED TV itself, such as reviews, you can compare prices, accessories, versus if you went to the home page, it's probably just going to be very basic information and more of an overview of everything that Samsung offers. Now we have sketching. So sketching can look very different. Some people will draw a little bit of their wireframes. Other people will just have boxes that really aren't, might not have the best design layout or anything yet. This is just the starting process. Your sketch is never supposed to be perfect at all. You start one sketch, see if it looks good, and keep going, see if it's user experience design friendly. Now we have our wireframes. So our wireframes are basically, when we put this online, we're going to put it either on an iPad, an iPhone, an Android, a computer laptop, whatever you are trying to create your platform for. This is the wireframes. You can see which button you press and where it's going to go next. Now we get to focus on some more things for creating. We need to focus on the language. We're going to think about branding, users, culture, and context in which the product is to be used. A little bit more of UI parts as well. We definitely want to use a good color scheme from the get-go. It's going to make it a lot easier throughout the process. And Adobe Cooler is a really helpful platform to utilize. Then we have the user interface mockup. We're going to create guidelines and continue using the same UI elements throughout the process. A good thing to do is make a mockup of all your UI elements, whichever buttons you're using, which colors, just to make sure everything's staying organized. Now we have our prototype. This is where we're going to choose mockups and their specific parts. We're going to add layers of interaction by linking them through. So we're going to try to create clickable mockups using tools like InVision or technologies like HTML and CSS. HTML and CSS are really going to bring our designs full on to life for every single user. For compatibility with target devices, you have to focus on this. Do you want this to work on a computer screen? Which size computer screen? What about an iPhone versus Android, or even a smartwatch or TV? You must design for your intended use. And you can design for 2 of these, even 3 of these. That's going to be called responsive. Now we're going to finalize. We're going to define guidelines and hierarchy for typography. Generally, a good rule is 12-point font is recommended. You're really going to want to use a limited number of fonts on a page. I definitely wouldn't recommend using more than 2 or 3. And make sure they complement each other. We also need to optimize and improve the existing designs. If there are any alternatives to consider, now it's the time to do so. Let's finalize the designs and make sure that they're presentable to customers. Copywriting. We're going to optimize the wording throughout the project. For instance, it's really a good idea to never use double negatives. It doesn't really work. Using the word you throughout instructions is really going to grab the user's attention and make sure that, that we're talking to them. We're also going to want to give feedback to users inside the product. Show when something is loading, when a user needs to wait, such as when you're uploading a file. You know how a lot of times the websites will show at what percentage the file is uploaded? That's really helpful. Also, adding error messages if something went wrong, and give feedback of successful users' actions. The last step, we're going to pass the design to the development team. This is going to be along with documents and document specs to have everything ready to be turned into code. But a good idea is to make sure you're checking in throughout the entire design process to make sure all of your work is doable for the development team. You need to make sure if they have enough time, energy, and also if they know how to do what you're asking of them. Now is our analyzation time. So we're going to set up our KPIs. So based on our project goals, we're going to define our key performance indicators to track for the product. So we're going to see what's been working, what hasn't been working. Make sure you're making and utilizing those changes. We're also going to create an A/B testing plan. So we're going to make a short roadmap of possible improvements and changes that can be made on the product. Definitely need to continuously test a product. It's never going to be perfect. We're going to observe and learn with usability testing, A/B tests, surveys, etc. People, we're always going to be learning, and you never, ever, ever want to stop testing a product. We're also going to sync with the development team. We're going to talk and inform the development team about the performance indicator changes and test results and decide if any changes need to be made. You want to stay in constant communication with them. Recap. So what did we learn so far? We learned about usability test, A/B test, how to use qualitative data, learned about information architecture. There was a lot on this PowerPoint, and I'm so excited that you came with me to learn all about UX design. So for our next session, it's going to be 5 practical guides for user experience and user interface. And I do offer web design private coaching sessions. You just click on this link and, I'll help you out. Thank you so much for coming to my lesson. I hope you learned a lot, and please feel free to give me a shout out whenever you need some help. Thank you. Have a good one.